Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. So as I mentioned in my previous video with the Ascent Fusion, I had a lot of running video from this crawling trip, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. There's some really cool stuff here. I run this truck through some really difficult lines, and it performed amazingly well. If you want to check out the bed that I have on this truck that you see here, look at my previous video. I have playlists on all my videos. You can look at the install and get my thoughts on that. I'm really happy with it. This is from SBI Prints. I got it off of Etsy, along with some really nice sliders, and I think the sliders helped out a lot. They do offer a bit more clearance as they are shorter than the stock ones. You'll see they don't really stick out past the back of the cab any longer, and it helps quite a bit with just clearance on breakovers, where it just doesn't get hung up as much, I noticed in a few spots. So really happy with the performance of this thing. This is up at Rifle Camp Park, which is definitely my favorite place to go and crawl. There are so many lines here everywhere you look, and every time I come here I find something new to play around on. Especially with a rig like this that's so capable, I start looking at things that maybe I didn't try with any other trucks I've had here, and this thing just makes short work of it. I was mainly interested in seeing the descending performance.
Angle, approach, still. Oh boy. Simmer down, there we go. Okay. Well,
yeah, so just watching this thing come down some of these hills, and I've definitely driven this truck on the exact lines in the past, and it's pretty much endoed coming down this. It's very light on the rear.
See, but that was nice. I was able to catch it. I saw it going. I was able to just throttle out.
Yeah, just trying not to talk over myself there too much, but stock, this truck is very light in the rear. It is more of a 60-40 weight bias, especially in previous videos I was running the battery up front next to the servo. With these new sliders, it has a much better battery retention strap, so I do have it mounted down on the slider, down low. And just weighing the front and rear and doing a little calculation, I figured that this is much closer to 55% front weight bias. So I definitely shifted a little bit of that weight toward the rear by adding the bed, and I also am running some brass portal weights on the rear, and I don't remember the exact weight, but they are a little bit thicker than the ones that come standard on the front, so it definitely has a little bit more portal weight on the rear than on the front now. So I may end up swapping those around. Now that I kind of see the performance, I'm pretty happy with it. I think maybe there's a few spots where shifting a little bit of weight back to the front might be beneficial, but overall I prefer to drive it in this configuration where it's a little bit more balanced, just because I do like descending just as much as I enjoy climbing some of these things. I just have a lot of fun going up and down, and I'm definitely not into just climbing something, picking up the rig and carrying it to the next spot and climbing that. I'd rather kind of just do it as more of a trail run and just go up and down steep obstacles all day. And the balance on this just works out better, in my opinion.
Whoa. I think I'm in a very bad spot here. Whoa. Okay. I'm impressed.
Yeah, so you can see in that last climb, very well controlled, and that's what I'm always after. Like, perfect example here as well, where it's just a very slow, just pivot. You know, you can see it coming, you can react to it, nothing happens too abruptly, and that's always my goal when setting up a crawler, is just to have everything happen almost in slow motion, so you can really just catch the vehicle and make a little adjustment, and it just kind of gives you time to react to it. To me, it's a much more enjoyable and satisfying way to drive. It's just things don't happen abruptly and it doesn't just tumble over out of nowhere. It doesn't. There's a frustration level
so much more
involved
control
where
over this
when you have a rig that just out of nowhere, like it seems like it's fine, and then just boom, it just tumbles over for no reason apparently, or it seems like it's no reason, but it really is just like a bad center of gravity, and or just a loss of stability, a lack in stability. Just a combination of things just make things happen too abruptly, and it just becomes really frustrating because it doesn't really give you a warning when it's going to happen, and you don't have any confidence in what the rig can do. So when you look at obstacles that maybe have a very steep drop off next to it, and maybe it's kind of risky because if you fall off, you're going to damage something. It just kind of makes you not even want to try things like that. But this rig is the opposite, where I feel comfortable enough driving this where I could kind of put this anywhere, and I'm pretty sure that I can kind of catch it or see when it's about to kind of give up. And it just makes it a really fun, enjoyable driving rig. I really had fun driving this truck today. This little climb here, this spot is super cool. I love this little stair-steppy, kind of craggy climb. And it's right on the edge. It's not a super big drop. You'll see in a minute when I descend this thing the first time I take a bad line, and it does fall off. But it's about from the top there, maybe a 4-foot drop. So you can see here that my driver's side rear tire is a little too close to that wall on the side, and it stays up too high, and it just kind of sends me tumbling down here. So yeah, but even that happened kind of slow.
Bad line.
I feel like if I throttled out of it, I might have been able to save it, but it's a little risky. Bed held up fine. When I came home at the end of this, I did kind of check everything over, and it did have some scrapes and scratches on it, which means it took a few hard hits, but held up completely fine, which is great because a lot of 3D printed items to me just have not held up. You know, I don't know what he printed these out of, but again, check out SBI Prints. I'm going to link up, I'll have some links down in the description here if you want to check those out. But yeah, if you're curious what else I have going on with this truck, check out my playlist, and you could see some of the previous videos. And yeah, I've come down that section in the past, and it's usually a lot sketchier. It was a lot sketchier before I added the weight on the rear. So definitely really happy with the setup. I think I may play around with some different shocks. I may switch these out to a Desert Lizard and try putting them on inverted just to get a little bit more weight down low. I'm really happy with the Desert Lizard setup I have on my Capra straight axle build. And that I may come out and do like a head-to-head run between those two rigs, because they're both insanely capable at this point, and I'm just curious to see which one will outperform the other, or which one is just more fun to drive. My Capra build does have dig, and I do love that feature. Kind of wish this truck had that. This does have overdrive, which my Capra does not, so I'd be curious to see. They're running the exact same tires, the J-Concept Ruptures. These have a much more expensive insert with a Three Brothers anti-foam. My Capra build has really cheap Proline dual stage knockoffs that were like $15. So I'm curious to, just for that alone, just to see which one. I do think these are definitely still a level up, but for $15, those inserts do work really well on my Capra. I think they're like Tim Tin brand off of Amazon. And here's a spot here where you can kind of see, like right there, the stock slider being longer toward the back may have just caused it to hang up and lift that rear wheel off the ground and lose traction. So I noticed a few spots throughout the day where having the shorter sliders on definitely was an advantage. Here, getting all twisted up in here. I wouldn't mind having a little bit more articulation as well, so I may go with like a 90 mil Desert Lizard, which when you stretch them out end up being longer. I think they're more like a 96 mil, so you do get a little more axle droop with that setup. So I may play around with that. Not that I have a huge complaint with these stock shocks. Work really well. I did go and install some heavier fluid in them, just to kind of have it move a little bit slower and be a little bit more controlled. This obstacle here, this is one of my favorite areas to play around in. This is the wall. It's just a huge, literally like steep wall of stone with dozens and dozens of different lines on it. If you were to set up gates on this, you could have a whole competition just in this little 100 square foot area, because tons of different lines in here. And I honestly don't even have a line going up here. I kind of always just play it by ear, and whatever kind of works. And I think the first rig I ever had that made it up this was my TRX 6, but not even in stock form. That thing had to be modified pretty heavily to really make this climb. So it's super difficult. It's really off camber. There's a lot of little dips and divots that if your wheel drops into it, it just throws it off balance very easily. And you almost need your rear wheels to slide around a little bit side to side to position it properly, without doing a ton of different, a ton of little back and forth movements to line it up precisely. But this truck, I think on the entrance, I had to really find the right starting point with this rig, and I did just cut that out just to save time. I know these videos get really long, so I think this was about the third try, but it was literally the first foot of this that I struggled on a couple times just to get the positioning right. And then once I got it, this is the first full attempt up here, and it pretty much just shot right up this thing. So really impressive. I'm going to come back down the side chute here, which also is very steep and chunky. And I did not have luck. This truck did not like descending this in stock form. I tried it a few times, and it just toppled over. You know, the ass end was so light, it just kept coming up and endoing down this hill. But with this setup, you'll see it's way more controlled, and that's exactly what I was after. I didn't really notice any downside to adding the weight on the rear. I just feel like overall the truck felt more planted in pretty much every situation. So I'm gonna leave it like this. Like I said, I might just swap the portal weights front to rear just to get a tiny, it might be like a 20-gram difference. I'll weigh them when I take them out, and just put the slightly heavier ones up front and test it and see. I may end up going back to this. I don't know if it'll be a super noticeable difference, but
Camera starts focusing on random people.
Yeah, coming down this, it's so much better. It's so much better than it was stock. And honestly, even just from aesthetics alone, I really love the way this thing looks with this SBI bed on the back. I think it just gives it a much more of a finished, but still kind of compy look.
Because it did so well on that.
Yeah, look, it gives you spots if you want to throw some little scale accessories in the back or something like that. A couple little fuel cans or a drive shaft or something to make it look cool. But I wouldn't put anything too heavy in there because it does sit up a little bit high. But yeah, man, I don't know what else I can say about the Ascent Fusion. I'm super happy. This is all stock electronics, stock gearing, stock servo. It's pretty much wheels and tires and then some tuning. I do have some stretchy hairbands on the front working to pull it down. I did remove the internal springs from the shocks, so these are just no internals on any of the shocks. And I really like the setup. That's also why I'm curious about trying the Desert Lizards too, because I can do an internal spring setup. But with those shocks, with how long they are, it doesn't really limit your travel as much. One thing I did not like about this in the stock setup with the internal springs, it really limited the extension of the spring, and it just limited the articulation too much, in my opinion, at least for the type of terrain that I have here, where it does get pretty chunky, and there's just, for me, the more articulation here, the better, up to a certain extent. You know, there's definitely too much of a good thing. So, but what I found with the longer Desert Lizards on my Capra build, I think that's probably the most articulation I have on any of my crawlers, and it just works out really well. So I've been happy with that. So I may try it on this. I don't know. Like I said, it's pretty damn good. But yeah, going back to just the overall build on this truck, the stock motor is amazing. I feel zero reason to mess with that at all. The gearing is perfect. Even the servo, yes, it could be stronger. Look, if you were actually comping this and
So this is probably
you
one of the
would,
crazier
take a penalty if you had to
descents.
reverse,
I'd call it
yeah,
a
I would
drop-off. There's
run
literally at the bottom here.
a stronger motor.
There's no way. I mean, it's
I mean, a stronger
vertical.
servo. Sorry,
So
I was
you
distracted
have
here,
to
but this is a very cool
power out.
descent. It's pretty much just a full-blown drop-off.
Rear sliding a little bit. That is so cool.
Yeah, there's no way to descend this without literally treating it as a drop-off, and you have to throttle out of it, but truck handled it perfectly. There's a really tricky section here too that I've struggled with. I've messed around with this obstacle right there for half hour straight with some crawlers I've had and just haven't been able to pull it off. And there were some cheater rocks placed in there, but I know I've done it with these rocks in this location and still struggled with certain rigs, and this was able to pull it off. But
Yeah.
and you'll see this next section here, which I thought was the easy part. It's like
Not too
it
many
really
crawlers that
it really
have
got
ever
me.
done that easily. I don't even think my TRX 6.
Yeah, coming
ever
up here,
did
there's
that.
just wheel
that
traps
easy.
galore, and it's a really tricky one to pull off. And this probably changed. Again, people do crawl here all the time. I always see guys up in this area, and people mess around with rocks and rock placement and stuff. So you never know what to expect, but it keeps it interesting.
And again, then the easy part ends up being the hard part, or what appears to be the easy
Let's get back
part.
to
There's
the
massive
electronics
wheel
once
traps.
again. I'm happy with the servo. If you were running in a comp and you're going to take a penalty for having to reverse or reposition, yeah, I think I would go out and spend the money on a really good servo. But for me, with what I'm doing, just going out and running this for fun, I don't mind if I have to back up, take a different line. I don't mind the challenge of figuring out how to work around a slightly underpowered servo. It's really not bad though. As far as an RTR servo goes, this is absolutely the best RTR servo I've used, and I'm just going to continue running it for as long as it holds up. So far, it's taken some pretty good hits, and I've had no issues with any gear stripping, so it seems to be pretty sturdy, and the power is there. You know, it's definitely got enough to go out, and I think it matches the capabilities of the truck. Now, yes, with a more powerful servo, you can gain an advantage in a lot of areas, but to me, this is a very good match to the capabilities of the truck, and you may have to take a different line here and there if it does get really bound up, but also looking at the strength, and this would be my one complaint with this truck as an RTR, is the strength of the rod ends on the links, and that's your suspension links. So far I haven't had an issue with the steering links, but I was just going to say that's probably because I'm running the stock servo. I have a feeling, because they are M3 rod ends and they're really not super strong, they can pull off of the threaded part of the link fairly easily. I've seen it happen on my front upper link. So I would think if you went and threw on like a mega power servo on here, you could potentially have issues with the steering links in the front, and then that of course requires another upgrade. So I've been happy with this. It matches what I want to get out of this truck really well. So it's going to stay in there until if and when something happens to it. Super happy with this wheel and tire setup. Just works really great. If you've run J-Concept Ruptures, you guys know how amazing they are. Probably not my favorite looking tire. I do prefer a slightly more scaled looking tire, but I've yet to really find one. Maybe like the Proline Flat Iron is close as far as like a scaled looking tire that works really well. But in terms of just all out traction, this tire pretty much destroys almost everything else I've tried. The only other thing that is close, if not slightly better in certain spots, is the Endura comp pin, which I don't know. It's on a full-on comp truck. It's fine. It's to me an even uglier looking tire than these are.
Unbelievable.
I shouldn't say ugly. I don't really mind these too much. And again, to base a tire just purely on looks, look, if you're going for a scale build or a scale look, this probably wouldn't be your truck of choice to begin with. But That would be like my only complaint with the Ruptures, is just it's not a great looking tire, but man, do they hook up and
That was
perform
just a
well,
bad line on my part.
especially with the right insert. And this was just a super impressive obstacle here. It's way more off camber than
Is it gonna
it
just slow roll
looks.
this?
And right here, you can see
Yeah.
right
Wow.
there is the benefit of having the shorter slider, because it allowed the rear to drop down and the tires to just get traction. The punch on this truck is great. With this Fusion SE motor, it just can jump up obstacles like that. And it just makes it a really fun driving experience. I love driving like that, where you can just kind of slow crawl something, but then if you're just unable to get it, you have that option to just punch it and see if you can kind of hop your way up and over an obstacle. And it just gives you another little tool in your arsenal to kind of get up over tricky obstacles. As far as any other mods that I'm thinking of doing with this truck, man, aside from the shocks, I almost don't even know what I would mess with. I'm pretty happy with everything. Maybe, as I mentioned, the links, just in terms of a durability factor, I think I would do stronger links, and that's probably about it. So if I do anything like that, I'll definitely make a video and let you guys know what I think and what I find that works out well. But so far, so good with this thing. I'm really loving this truck, and I highly recommend picking one up. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.